Hi, I'm Jeff Murr. I want to welcome you to True Texas History, and today I'm going to be talking about what you didn't know about the Guiterrez-Magee Expedition. Because today, August the 8th, is also the anniversary of when the Guiterrez-Magee expedition crossed the Sabine River into Texas. That was back in 1812. Now this was a fascinating time in Texas history, and I wish I would have paid more attention in my Texas history class, or that my teacher would have gotten into it a little more. But I think a lot of times these things are not emphasized, and they don't realize the importance of what's going on. Let's see if I can go ahead and give you some background here, because I think that will make the story much more fascinating. Well, this fellow, Jose Bernardo Maximiliano Guiterrez de Lara, also known as Jose Guiterrez, he had been involved with the Father Hidalgo uprising. Now, I don't know if you remember that, but that's started down in some of the Mexican states. I know, you have El Grito and this, a lot of things like that down there near San Miguel in Mexico. Anyways, Guiterrez, there was a lot of fallout from the Father Hidalgo uprising, and he managed escaping. And one of the first places he went, because he had these plans for Texas. He wanted Texas to be independent of Spain. Now notice I'm talking about Spain here. And so he goes to Louisiana, and who does he run into but James Wilkinson? James Wilkinson had been his friend, and they had had some under-the-table dealings, and he discussed his plans with James Wilkinson. Of course, he didn't know Wilkinson was a spy for the Spanish, so they pretty much knew ahead of time what was going to happen. But Wilkinson went there. Someone else who he met there was a fellow by the name of Sibley, and Sibley gave Guiterrez an introduction to the Secretary of State. At that time it was James Monroe. Yes, that's the same James Monroe that went on to become president. So Guiterrez trots on up to Washington City at that time, and he meets with delegates from England, from Denmark, from Russia, because you got to wonder, what do these plans for Texas have to do with Russia? I mean, but events in Texas were very much in the interest of a lot of people throughout the world. There was a lot of international intrigue going on at that time, and people don't realize it. Because it was also about this time that whole Aaron Burr episode happened that I talked about the other day. But the U.S. policy at that point was, we do not officially condone coming up with an expedition into Texas. Now, I refer to it as an expedition, but I know that some of the history books refer to it as filibusters. Now, we don't, here in the 21st century, recognize what filibuster is. This was a term used that was akin to pirates. And, with pirates, you wanted to kill them on sight. A lot of times they had a bounty on their heads. And the same thing for filibuster. These were essentially land pirates in the eyes of the Spanish. But the U.S. was not officially going to condone any type of expedition. And Guiterrez never met with the president, but he met with the Secretary of State, who he's the one that opened the door for him to meet with all the other foreign delegates. Now, unbeknownst to him, the British delegate and the British delegation, they already had their own plans afoot. And, you talk about James Bond MI6 stuff. This is nothing new to the 20th century, because this intrigue with spies and stuff went back there. And they made sure that they had some British spies in Texas, and they were doing their best to try to get some inserted into this expedition. Well, this expedition was approved of and put together, and it was decided that an American would lead it. And they took an American who officially left the army, a fellow by the name of Guiterrez-Magee. Um, he went ahead and renounced his officership. Of course, it remains to be seen whether or not this was a planned thing, but Guiterrez had these plans for Texas, and Magee led the expedition, and they started off with, I believe, roughly about 130 men. Um, Now, the whole episode ended up being one filled with intrigue. Like I said, you had British spies, you had the French. They show up as well because at that time, keep in mind, War of 1812, all that stuff is raging in Europe, so not everybody trusts the French, and not everybody trusts the British either, because this is right before some of America fighting the British in the War of 1812. But that's after the Guiterrez-Magee Expedition, because some of those guys end up fighting in the Battle of New Orleans, and it gets to be a fascinating intrigue how all these people are intertwined with each other. But I encourage you, learn more about the Guiterrez-Magee Expedition, because with this expedition, once they kick this, they defeat the Spanish, they go ahead and declare the independence of Texas. Oh, gee, you know what that means, don't you? That means Texas had its independence before Mexico did. Oh, shock. A lot of history people would freak out. Now, that little episode with Guiterrez-Magee often gets downplayed, but if you check the documents, it's there, and it's worth checking into. It definitely raises a lot of eyebrows, and there's lots of literal backstabbing going on with the expedition as everything unfurls. They fight in San Antonio. The largest battle ever fought in Texas was fought by members of the Guiterrez-Magee Expedition in the Battle of Medina, which comes up later this month. I may have to do a special on that one. But I encourage you, pick up your history books, read about the Guiterrez-Magee, and think through what all is going on. The duplicitous double playing, black bag operations type of thing. We don't like to think of that type of thing going on in the 1800s, but it was very much alive and well. Now, I cover it in my book, Texans Always Move Them. You can find it at texansalwaysmovethem.com. Get yourself some good history. It will change the way that you look at things. So until next time, this is Jeff Murrah, wishing you well. Vaya con Dios. See you later. Bye.